this to get better. I really did. And there's the 1-inch bars. They're from Builtwell. And I wanted to show you those TIG welds because I know they're not made in America yet, but they may be one day. And these guys seem to have a good eye on quality. So some of the better TIG welding I've seen from non-Japanese, at least, factories. So we got the fender off, and I hope that's not dog poo on that tire. That's all I can say. It's going to cost more, I think. Anyways, we had rubbing for sure, if you can look at this. And that was my first suggestion, was that we had flex in this back end. And that over bumps, I guess the tire was bouncing up or filling up when it was compressed on the bottom, but it wasn't really, wasn't driven that hard. It was just cruised down the street. I don't think any curbs were hopped or anything at all. So, by judgment of the original owner, or at least by what I've heard, and that it was a new buyer. So, the nuts were definitely rubbing. Because on the inside of the fender we have this. And this is right at the back. And the side that's cracked has black across here. This disturbs me a bit. It looks like it was some kind of Harley fender or something, and look at all the spot welds to fill it. This is what... I don't know. I wouldn't even use this fender if you look at all the little dents and stuff. But it must not cost anything. And that's not the way to build a bike. Unless you intend to build it for yourself, which the builder intended. But then he, I guess, got excited about people's reception of it and overvalued it. And now I'm dealing with the fixing of it, which, I've spent 20 years doing a good job at breaking things and stuff, and this is pretty good. This is up there. So unless you actually make mistakes, then you don't know how not to make them, do you? And people that don't make mistakes are a pretty rare breed, or are doing nothing with their time and bikes, because you're bound to be making mistakes and experimenting. And experiment with your own bike. My bike I've experimented with quite a bit, and I wouldn't turn around and sell it painted up and shined up, not in any kind of emergency. And that's the only reason I can think of somebody selling something like this would be an emergency, like you haven't eaten Kraft dinner in a week or something, But, and I know that the builder's not that wealthy a person, so it's not like it was intentional to the extent that we've discovered. But if you look at the inside of this, you got these here, you got that one there, you've got this one here, you got these welds, which are extensive, but the beautiful body work, really, really nice body work. You wouldn't see it. But this you might see. When the rail came off, we have Bondo here. So, and we have Bondo dust there from the vibration, I guess. So, we also have rubber here, which is a good idea. But what we're going to have to do with this fender, if we're going to use it, and it's square fender, so I can see, we'd have to put a big fat tire on the back to make it look right if it was rounded sport profile. It's not going to fill it like the square tire, which this style of fender may have been from, as a salvaged, rusty fender off eBay or something. And it's fun to restore a fender this well. Visibly for a show is fine. If they'd looked underneath and taken the wheel off, then they would see the amount of work that was put into this fender. So if I can keep this surface clean, then it's well worth salvaging. There's a couple of little scratches, but nothing that polishing compound won't come out with, and it looks like just a gloss, so a gentle white cream polishing compound might take that out. And what I'm suggesting to this is the rub there is from the tire maybe, so whatever we do to the bolts won't really fix that problem, because it's obviously been able to contact between this set of bolts and this set of bolts. So the major amount of streaming was coming off the back end here, right off the back it seems. That's where most of the residue is. And but actually, and that's where you can see it piling up in front of the nut here. So it was actually rubbing and then jamming up and being spun off these nuts into this area as well. So only one side of this fender is really coming closer than the other, but both are touching because all the nuts have the black rubber on them. That one's really good indicator. That's like forensic stuff. If you look at that, that's like the direction of the wear even. So it's a good thing they were rounded, I guess, because they didn't machine harsh cuts into the tire. But what I'm going to suggest we do is I take it to my professional TIG welder of 30 years or so, and she will take it, and we will burn, I guess we'll burn a little Bondo, but we'll have to grind this away, and then mount, with TIG welds, mount nuts right directly to the tin, if we can. And short of that, I will make, which might not be possible with all this Bondo, and we want to keep this fender because it's a good fender. You know, it's clean as it's going to get, and obviously it did well in the show, so might as well keep that. And what I'll do is I'll take down nuts that will be 1/4 inch thinner than this, and then we will basically tack that underneath as a stud. And then I can tighten on the actual, with the wheel off, I can tighten down a short head nut, even round it, so that there's no friction damage to the tire. If it does hit, it will just rub, it won't cut. And we'll mount that from the inside out so that we have more clearance. And then we'll put acorn nuts on. I'll get nice stainless acorn nuts, like the front of the Triumph case has, right there. As you can see, those acorn nuts there. So you can get those, and I'll get those, and they'll come out this side of the fender on the bracket, and then you'll have 2 acorn nuts here, which will look nice, holding the bolts onto the fender. But that means the fender has to go on with the tire off, and then the tire goes on. And that clearance also we will have to check, because just looking at the bike, it's not going to happen. No, fender has to come off to have the tire off. So now the tire can come off the bike. So well, I guess I'll just have to get, this is an access point. I gotta admit, the designer or the builder that built this did consider this position, but it could have been just fluke that he lucked out that the wrench fits in this side, and I can actually almost contact both of these. I've already had that rear wheel off, and I don't want to take it off again, but I can contact both of these here, so if I can get bolts in there, maybe to press the tire pressure, we'll just lower the tire pressure and see if the fender also clears to get off as well, the tire. But we'll definitely deflate the tire, and I'll get somebody to push on it while I put the nuts in, or the bolts on from the inside out. So I'll be able to get them in there with a pair of pliers or something, and then tighten them from the outside with the acorn nuts and cut them down to the proper size. So a couple hours of work, maybe 3 hours with running to get bolts and stuff like that on the bike. And then the rail will be made. I'm going to take the rest of the rail off in the morning maybe, and that can be fabricated. And the skid plate, I'm just going to drag up the drawings in order to secure the exhaust pipes and stabilize them and make them basically one piece at the bottom for the mounting. And at another time we'll if we do the engine, then maybe I'll pull the engine and we can weld the mounts back on with straight across bars on the bottom rather than just tabs. We'll bridge it right across the whole frame, and then you'll have a stable base to attach your exhaust pipes to. As well, we'll have to clean the frame down there, repaint it and stuff. But that's probably a really important thing to do. The plate that we're building now is a skid plate, and it will temporarily hold 3 points for the, or 6 bolts, but 3 points on the frame. The skid plate and the other skid plate will, or the actual skid plate will safely contact frame if it does get smashed on this side where there is no tab, because this is free now. So what will happen is that this will be tight again up, and the plate will hold it, the skid plate, which will be protecting those wires exiting the bottom of the frame, if you can see those. And that's solved. Now there is oil in the actual electrics box. I didn't want to do this, but... And that's from when the head gasket blew. And that's where oil was streaming on the back and coming down the case and then onto the tire. So that was from the head gasket leak, which you can see is quite wet. It's obviously leaking there, so we'll have to see how bad that is once I rag it and clean it and get the engine started fresh. I'll perhaps try to check the torque on the bolts of the head, but recrushing a copper head gasket isn't a good idea, especially off one side, not the other. So, lots to do, and hope everybody had a good Remembrance Day. Had a really good ride today on the bike. And just to prove that you have to shake down your bike and take it out 50 miles or 30, 40 miles if you're building a bike for somebody, not just around the block. I came home with this, so nobody's perfect. I'm not saying that I'm perfect, that's for damn sure. I broke, like I said, a lot of things. But this union came off, and it wasn't because of the loosening of the engine's vibrations or anything, because this engine doesn't vibrate that much. If you notice, it's a very smooth engine, and I didn't build this engine, so I'm not taking credit for that. But, we started with a good working Harley, and that's what you have to start with to style it, and to be able to build something custom that looks custom. And basically, the brake pedal was misadjusted. It was passing this point. Now it's just stopping there. But it was loosening this nut here. And before I adjusted it, it was loosening that nut every time I would apply the brakes to indicate a brake light. And eventually this came apart almost. So, I saw it was all loose, and I just grabbed it by checking, and I was checking all the points on the bike, not driving too far on it, and tightened up that, and nothing else really came loose on it. The gear shifter was fine, and foot pegs were fine, and I'm pretty happy with that. So, brake light's working good. Super Trap, here's something that you realize after you go on the highway. In a shakedown ride, and the customer might notice later, but excuse me, the soot from the Super Trap, if you had your chopper, it would be all nice chrome being sooted up like this. So you can see that, it's a motorcycle. If you're going to drive it, then you're going to obviously get it dirty, and that's just exhaust, that's carbon, so carbon tax that, I guess. But anyways, that's the update for that bike today.